Good morning and welcome to your Farm and Home Show. My name is Joanna Coles, and this morning we're visiting with Kristin Hildabrand, Warren County Extension Agent for Horticulture. Good morning, Kristin.
Good morning, Joanna.
Now, Kristin, a lot of times when we think about the Kentucky garden, onions is not one of the first things that comes to mind.
No.
But we can grow onions in Kentucky.
Yeah, that's right. So I like talking about onions because onions really do enhance a lot of other vegetables that you can grow in the garden. And, they're fairly simple to grow. There's just a couple of things you need to kind of keep in mind when you're growing onions for the spring garden. And we're going to talk about some of those things to consider. But first off are the types of different onions that are available. So I think a lot of times people think about the colors. Do you like purple? Do you like yellow? Or do you like white onions? But there's two main types that generally you can select from: the American, which is more pungent, and then there's the foreign type, which is more of a milder. So it really depends on what you're looking for. Our taste buds are all, different. So really, try to look at what varieties do well for us here in Kentucky. And so really onions are in the allium family. So they're based off of their day length is going to be how much time that they need to grow. And so you can divide onions into long day, which are 14 hours or more, or intermediate, which that fits us here in Kentucky for the most part, intermediate day, or their short day that they grow further down south. So just make sure that you have the right variety picked out, so that way that it'll be successful for us here in Kentucky. So a lot of times in catalogs you may see it also intermediate may be used for day neutral, and so those are the same thing, intermediate day, which is basically about 12 hours. That's about how much daylight that they need.
And a lot of times, Kristin, when I go into a farm supply store or maybe a garden center, onion sets are some of the first things that you see there.
Yes.
But a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to grow onions, pick them up and go home. But there's so many things, like you're talking about the light and varieties and those type of things we probably need to consider.
Some of the spring varieties that do well for us here in Kentucky are Expression, Sweet Spanish does really well. There's a sweeter variety called Candy, and it's more of a yellow onion variety. There's also Red Candy Apple. Superstar does really well. Walla Walla is one that's a little bit more on the sweeter side, and there's also Red Line. Now those are just a few that I mentioned, but you can contact your local extension office and they can put some varieties in your hand if you're wanting to look at it. But you're right, most of the time when we're looking for those onions, we're looking at sets or little transplants or maybe even seeds. And for most people in the home garden, we don't want you to really start from seed because there's just a lot of time that goes into that. Really, you need to start that at the end of January. So the two options that home gardeners can look at are transplants, which are smaller seedlings. They're shipped to you directly, and then you can plant it according to your day and time and things like that. Or you can use like little bulbettes that you can find at the farm supply stores, and that way you can just directly plant those in. So the thing I want to mention about the spring garden is that it can be really wet. So, what type of planting dates are we looking at? So depending on how the soil type is, if it's really, really wet, you might want to delay planting. But in a general time frame, we want to say about mid-March up until the 1st of April, or maybe even mid-April. But it really just depends on your variety. Generally, those varieties that we mentioned can take anywhere from like 95 days on up to 100, 120. So you just need to make sure that you allot for those. And like I said, if the soil is really wet like it is in the spring for us here in Kentucky, you may have to wait until things improve.
So you don't need a very big space to grow onions.
No, you really don't. And a lot of times we talk about bunching onions, which are the small green onions. So it really just depends on what you're actually wanting to do. But if you do things the correct way, like harvesting and curing, some of the onions can last for a couple of months. And, there may be ways that you can go ahead and chop them up and freeze them and have them readily available for future meals.
So Kristin, if people want more information about raising onions, can they come to the extension office?
Absolutely. We have a really good resource. It's the Home Vegetable Gardening Guide in Kentucky. So if you would like to pick up that, it's absolutely free, and it really helps you, especially when you're growing onions or even other vegetables here in Kentucky.
Thanks, Kristin, for the information and the inspiration, and make sure to include onions in your Kentucky garden this year. We appreciate you watching the Farm and Home Show and hope you have a great day.